And now, from Olympic Studios in London, England, Joey Tempest, John Levin, Key Marcello, Ian Hogland, and Mick McChelly. This is Europe.
Upplands Väsby, that's outside Stockholm. Yeah, I got one sister. I think she's the only one who has a little bit of musical talent in the family. So she tried to play guitar and piano, like take classes and stuff. It didn't work out very good, so that's how I came to trying instruments, because there was a piano at home and a guitar. I remember one day a friend of my father's, another pilot, came home and he knew 3 chords on the guitar and he taught me those. So that's how it started. Yeah, I think it was a turning thing, because I realized that you could put chords together to a song. I was very young, I think, around 7 or 8 or something. I remember I listened a lot to Elton John as a piano player at the beginning. That's why I started to. I remember Crocodile Rock. I was trying to copy that song on piano. You can do it real simple. You can, I remember dun, 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 dun. You can just hammer the piano. But later, when I started school, the influences came in. Like you heard your pals. They would listen to different bands, and at that point, there was bands like Sweet and Slade. Those bands really made us get interested in starting bands, starting something. Some pals of mine in my class, we formed a band and we did some covers, I think, like Keep a Knocking. You keep a knocking, but you can't come in, and stuff like that. I was in a 3rd or 4th or 5th year of school. We did that. And from there we started to fantasize of having bands and putting songs together. And so after that, I began to get into bands and get guys with me and started playing. I began playing rhythm guitar and sang a little. I was singing, but I didn't know I was a singer. I was just singing because I was writing. That's the thing. I was putting songs together really, really early. I was fascinated how you could, get things to go around and, bridges and choruses. Well, the songs were not probably good, but it felt that's one thing that I could do. So every night home from school, take guitar and play. That's what the procedure, and just putting chords together.
Play trumpet for a while.
Yeah. As Mick says here, I heard Louis Armstrong, and he was also singing and playing his instrument, and I liked his vibrato. I liked the way he did his thing. So I was into trumpet. I played trumpet for a while. That was in 3rd grade. Then it started to get more serious. Then it was regular rehearsing days. We were called Jet, I think. I was singing, and a friend of mine was playing guitar and drums. But in the performance in school, we only had 1 snare drum, so the drummer just stood with 1 snare drum. You keep on knocking, but and the guitarist, I don't think he even had sound on it, so he has to play it hard, for the class to hear it. We didn't have an amplifier. We went through the class tape recorder, so it was distorted, and it must have sounded awful. And we did a lot of makeup and stuff. So that was the first, but that was not so serious. But we had fantasies about doing something later on. And those guys were with me for a while until I joined another band. I think it was called Roxanne or Blazer. Then it became more serious, and I was writing the songs, and we were then a 4 or 5 piece band. But still our own songs. We didn't do many covers. And then there was a situation in the place I lived that it was another band, a more heavy band. It was actually called WC. That's what you use for a toilet for bathroom. They were called because they didn't care what they were called. They played a lot of cover stuff. They played a lot of UFO, Thin Lizzy, and they were really good because I liked it. It was heavy. It was good live. I went to see them. And I became a friend of the guitarist there. It was John Norum, which was the previous guitarist of this band. After that, we spent a lot of time together. We formed a band called Force, which later on became Europe. John Norum and the bass player John Levin. He came in at that time too. Yes, I probably met John Levin by doing things like that. Football and ice hockey, that's where we first saw each other and things like that. I was doing things like that when I was younger, yes. Gymnast for a while. My parents, they really, they wanted me to try things. And I appreciate that now, But more and more the music took overhand. But I still went to school. I went to high school. After normal school, I went to high school for a 4-year thing. but I quit after 3 years. And my grades weren't too good, but I was writing lyrics during lessons and stuff like that. I remember teachers telling me, you don't know about your rehearsing every night. You should do more homework and stuff. And I told them, I hope that, I can make a living out of this someday. But I still did school. I'm going to try to do it as good as I can. I was pretty convinced, but I wasn't that serious then. I had so many fantasies about it. That's why I daydreamed all the time about bands and all that. That's why I came up with the name Europe. We had a band called Force. I remember I was sitting on a train. I had a short-time job as a cleaner or something. I remember. And I just came up with the name. I was just trying it to myself, the name Europe. I was like fantasizing about a black hall with a bunch of people waiting for a band to come on stage and somebody introducing them like, well, tonight's on stage, we have. And then I tried different, Europe. Yeah, it's different and it's big and it's, And I remember telling it to the band and it was, well, guys, I have this, I don't know if I want to tell you this, but I got a new idea for it. Let's have the Force. We were called Force. And we were at my place and drinking a couple of beers. What do you think of this? I said Europe, and it was quiet for a minute. But then they said, yeah, well, we can think about it. And then we forgot about it, taking a few more beers. And then a few, weeks went by, and we were rehearsing, and I was asking them again, what do you think? Yeah. I guess they didn't care so much, a new name, whatever. Yeah, the contest, but we were a 4-piece band doing the contest. It was me and John Levin and the old guitarist, John Norum, and another drummer. And we played and we recorded one album like that with that setup, 4-piece band. For the first Europe album, it was recorded in a short period of time, a low production thing. Some of the song ideas are good, but that was the prize of winning the contest. That's how it started, and we met Thomas Ertman, one of my best friends, the band's friend and the manager. He's been with us now since then. That's where we met. I guess that was faith, because since then it has been going real upwards. And me and Thomas has worked pretty close together, because he, as a record company guy, has taken that side of it, and I, try to fit the music into it. And we did Wings of Tomorrow, which was the second one, still as a 4-piece band, the same setup. And then on that tour, after that album, Wings of Tomorrow, which was recorded in 1984, Mick came in as a keyboard player. And at the same time, Ian came in the picture, because we were talking about changing drummer.
In a place called Umeå. It's in the very north of Sweden. It's far up, the land of the polar bears. We had summers, but it's much colder in the winters.
Actually, that's where he came from. That's where you can see the midnight sun, where the sun stays up all night.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's really nice. A lot of friends of mine, they go there, they have problems in sleeping because it's almost like daylight all the time. But I think it's lovely.
In the wintertime, I sleep all the time because then it's dark.
It's dark. That's terrible. When I was about 12 years old, I got my first electric guitar. So that's when it happened. Clapton and Jeff Beck and Jimi Hendrix and that stuff. That was the basic stuff for me. I think it was the Beatlemania. When I was very small, apparently, I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. They were huge all over Europe, and my mother kept telling me this stuff when I was watching the telly, and the Beatles were on. And I was trying to play the guitar. I had a toy guitar, this size, and I was putting that on, and I was jamming in front of the television.
No.
And I think a lot of rock musicians, they tend to learn themselves, to be self-taught. I had one guitar lesson, and the teacher told me my fingers were too short. And that was about it. So I forgot all about the classical stuff and started to pick out Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck riffs instead, And my uncle Henry gave me a book with all the chords, the guitar chords. He was a jazz guitar player. He was doing Wes Montgomery and Barney Kessel and that stuff. And it's pretty good as well. I got the first couple of 3 or 4 chords. From there, I could start to develop something by myself. My mother bought it for me, my first electric guitar. It was a Christmas gift, right? From the very minute I got it, it was, the center of my life. That was everything, Before that, I was doing some sports and stuff, playing football, and I just didn't do that anymore, because when I got the guitar, that was everything for me. I was practicing every day, picking out licks, trying to form a rock band. The very first band I was in was actually a band called Joker, 12 years old, yeah. A new guy that had a drum kit, and they got it as a Christmas gift as well. So just form a band. From the beginning it was only me and him, the guitar and drums. Funny enough, we're writing our own songs as well. Sort of doing travesties on well-known riffs, guitar riffs, and adding a rhythm pattern to that. And then we found a bass player, and we had the first band there. So I rehearsed for a couple of years, and made a first gig at the school. It was terrible. My amplifier caught fire. I just plugged in myself in the bass amplifier. I started to work on a shop selling fishing tools. My dream was always to become a professional musician, so I was aiming for that. I was playing with different bands in Umeå, and then all of a sudden I discovered that this is not a market. This town is too small. It's becoming too small to me. So I packed a bag and went to Stockholm, where I've been living ever since. That was pretty tricky the first 3 or 4 years to try to get into the music business, and you didn't know anybody, and you're considered to be the country boy coming from nowhere. I found a couple of guys that had the same taste for music as me, and we started to form a band. And in 1982 it was, I think, I formed my own band, the former band I was in, called Easy Action. We were playing together for about 5 years. It's always been 100% music, and I don't know what I can do besides playing music. Since that Christmas, it's been number one. I was producing some stuff as well in Stockholm, and then Thomas, the manager, phoned me up and asked me if I wanted to join the band, and I was pretty shocked. After a couple of weeks, I decided to join the band. At the time, I think Europe wasn't that happening, except in Holland, and
Was in Europe actually.
I was producing a lot of rock stuff in Scandinavia, and then this journalist, actually, it was his idea of making this record for Ethiopia, and he wanted me for producing it, and Joey for the vocals, or for the songwriting. So we put his stuff together, and I got musicians, and we made the basic tracks, and Joey started to sing. The work went really smooth, and it felt great to work together. We both thought this was long before Europe and everything. So I guess that was also, in the decision when they asked me.
It's called Upplands Väsby. When we're talking in the band of our background, it's like we all very early started to sort of aim for it. We had a piano at home since I was real small, so as soon as I was tall enough to reach the keys, I started to play. And my mother, she sang in a choir, and she was touring all over Europe. I had the music from the beginning in that way. And it was the same as Key, because one night I couldn't sleep. I was about 6 years old, I think. And she brought me down to the television, and it was Beatles on the television. I asked her, "What's this?" And she said, "It's Beatles." So I said, "Oh, do they have a record? I want to have the record." So I got a record called Oldies But Goldies with the Beatles. It's a best of when I was 7 years old, I think. I took piano lessons for 1 year, but I quit because I didn't like somebody else telling me what to do and what to play and all that. But maybe it helped me a little bit, I don't know. When we started this band, I was about 13 or 14. I played the guitar at the moment because I couldn't afford to buy a synthesizer, so I played the guitar through an old radio, and it sounded terrible, and I sang too, and that sounded even worse. There was a couple of neighbors who actually moved. I don't know if it was because of us or other reasons. I moved to another band, and we call ourselves Ictus. I was 16, and I had bought my first synthesizer. The older I got, the more I started to get to know different people who played in different bands, and I got to know John, Joey, and Ian. Well, we were all playing in the same music festivals and stuff. Everybody knew each other, and sometimes we went to their rehearsal places and checked out, standing outside and listening. Everybody sort of went to each other's rehearsing places and listened. And what's he doing on the guitar now? What's he doing on the keyboards? Trying to get new things and new licks. I started a band called Avalon, And that was probably the band with the most musical potential. And at the same time, Europe made the first album. We played the same festival, 1983. The guys in the band told me later that they was watching and they were sort of looking for a keyboard player. So 1 year later, they asked me to join the band because they wanted to have keyboards on tour. I thought about it for about 2 minutes, and then I said, go for it.
It was a pretty calm childhood outside Stockholm. Lots of nature and stuff. I mostly played football and ice hockey. I actually were in the same hockey team as Joey. That's where I met him the first time. I think it actually was Kiss, that album, Hotter Than Hell, that brought my attention to music. You only have one radio station and they don't play very much. Well, I guess you had to just pick it up by yourself by going to the store and check it out. I started playing acoustic guitar 13, 14. My grandma gave me an old acoustic guitar, and I picked out stuff from the records. And then a band came along and asked they needed a bass player, so I started playing the bass. I was doing guitars and bass in different kind of local bands. Then I actually played bass guitar with Yngwie Malmsteen for a while. Rising Force. He's in the States now. He lives in Texas, I guess. At that time, I didn't think I would do it professionally. I just did it because it was a hobby kind of thing. I only had music as an interest, and I lived for music. I raced in motocross. But I quit all that and started playing. I was 18, we were professionals, because we won this big rock contest in Sweden. And the first prize was to record an album. Actually, it was the guitar player at that point who asked me.
No, actually, a little bit further north, a village or town called Märsta. It's in Swedish, it's Märsta. And my father, he works at Arlanda International, the airport. Grew up a little bit outside the actual town, a little bit on the countryside, just between the village and the airport, which is quite near where I used to live. 3 older brothers I have. My mother, she had a bunch of old Swedish records, like from this really old kind of typical Swedish kind of folk music. And we had a little gramophone, and I couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old. And I started to play these records, and I don't know, I just liked the music. I didn't really like the kind of music, but I liked music. After a while, I think I started listening to the radio. We had some radio programs that must have been early 70s, like they played Deep Purple. That was the first time I heard Deep Purple, actually, on that radio show. Machine Head, Highway Star, and those songs. And I found out that I liked the more aggressive kind of music. From there, I started listening to groups like The Sweet, a British band, and Nazareth, another British band, I think. And then I went over to, Kiss, Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow, and Deep Purple. I don't know, really. I played on my mother's pots and pans, as they used to say, like 6 or 7 years old. I remember I got this toy guitar, I used to play pretending that I was a guitarist and having these shows for my mother and father in the living room. I got a friend, and he was really into Kiss and bands like Tubes and these kind of bands. And he wanted to start a group, and I didn't know really what to play though. I liked drums and I liked bass guitar. I decided on playing the drums just because a drum kit would be less expensive than a bass amplifier and a bass guitar. So I was 13 years old. I got sacked because I was hitting the drums too hard. Yeah, I was playing too loud for the other guys. So the first band that we started to have any gigs with was a band called Trilogy. It was a 3-piece band. We were really influenced by Rush, Canadian band. Then we entered the same rock band contest as Europe went into. And we actually met on the same part competition. Europe won the contest, and we had to go home and just continue the practicing.
That's how we found Ian, actually. We knew that he was a very good drummer. And when we needed a new drummer, we remembered that Ian.
I wanted to continue playing, and I wanted to be a professional musician, but I didn't know any band in Sweden except for Europe, of course. So I thought, like, maybe either I do like Yngwie, I move out of Sweden, or I would like to play with Europe, because Europe is the only band that plays the kind of music that I like and has any kind of success. And then a year later, they phoned me up and asked me if I was interested in playing.